Hello, folks. This is Joe with a very special announcement. On Friday, September 21st, I'll be hosting the Trap Set Live with special guests Rod Argent and Colin Blunstone, founders of one of my all-time favorite bands, The Zombies. After the conversation, Rod and Colin will play an ultra-rare, all-acoustic set of timeless classics. It all takes place at Ace Hotel in Palm Springs, California. This is an intimate performance and space is limited. Don't miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Visit acehotel.com/zombies for ticket information.
It's just a bunch of people getting together and it just naturally works. It was like the result was already sealed in the envelope before the person showed up.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing The Upsetter by Jack Johnson, featuring my guest, Adam Topol, on drums. A native of Lake Tahoe, Adam's formative years were spent listening to punk rock. Later, he studied jazz and became a serious student of Latin and Jamaican music. Adam had a brief stint with Pixies guitarist Joey Santiago before joining Jack Johnson, with whom he's worked for nearly 20 years. Adam has also released music with Culver City Dub Collective, Ritmo y Canto, and as a singer-songwriter under his own name. He's the co-founder of drum accessory company Roots EQ. I spoke to him in downtown Los Angeles. And now my conversation with Adam Topol.
Upset your thoughts, upset this world that you stand in.
I think if you're in Lake Tahoe and you don't ski a little bit, you're kind of missing out. The mountains are beautiful, and so water skiing, stuff like that, nature and that.
Was it just you, or did you have siblings?
Sister, older.
Did she have a cool record collection?
It was more my dad. He was the guy that took me to Santana when we were 12 years old, who played me like James Brown, John Coltrane, and then I think we all learned from him. I think my sister and I connected on like Cat Stevens and the Beatles and stuff. So
I saw Cat Stevens about 2 years ago at the Pantages. It was absolutely great.
Oh my God!
The only downside was that all these baby boomers in the audience had their camera phones up the whole time. It was really obnoxious.
Dude, what is it with that? I mean, I had the pleasure of seeing so many gigs before camera phones, and now I just get distracted.
Yeah.
I went and heard my friend Butch play drums, and it was like I couldn't even see
Butch
him.
Norton?
Yeah. It was at Genghis Cohen, and there were so many camera phones up. I was actually watching him play through someone's video.
What line of work were your parents in?
My dad was actually a really good alto player in the day, but he quit music to become a family guy at a young age. 20, he had my sister, and so he did.
Really?
Yeah, young parents. And so both my parents were. So he stopped doing like any kind of music and did like real estate developing, and he was basically venture capital.
How did he figure out how to do all that stuff?
Dude, it's funny. He never went to college, dropped out and stuff. And his thing was just like, he had a creative musician's mind. So he could just dream of things. Like we would think of a song or a drum beat. He applied that to like business or entrepreneurship. So Lake Tahoe, California was like just a really small town, like a ski town. It was blue collar, and there wasn't much there. So there was just a big patch of land, and he was just like, wow, this could use a supermarket and a post office and a subway. And so he just approached all those individual people and said, you know, if I can get a post office and a Safeway, would you want to come in? And they would say yes. And so he basically got all the people to commit, and then a bank loaned the money, and then he built this shopping center. So basically,
he didn't have a mentor in that regard or anything. He just
No.
he was like, "I'll be a real estate developer."
Yeah.
and he was like 20 at the time. Huh.
It's pretty humbling, I think.
What did his parents do?
They were in the lumber business, and
Okay.
and I think they had business smarts, like old school Russian Jewish. Like my grandfather had like started out with a diaper company, and then he made money from diapers, if you can believe it. And then
Everybody needs diapers at some
Right?
point,
Right.
At
Sheep's
the
Head
beginning
Bay.
and the ends.
That's it, man. So Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, they were from there. And then I think they bought some real estate, and they went to Sacramento and developed their business. But my dad was sort of a renegade. He was kicked out of school in Florida for, I think, illegally running like tobacco and
So
stuff.
he was like a hustler.
Yeah, he was pretty wild, man. I think he borrowed a family member's boat to run some items back and forth from Cuba, and I think his competition found out and sank the boat. So he had to drop out of school and come back, and he was meant to go work at a lumber mill, which by then his dad ran. And he wasn't cut out for that. He just like didn't like to. He wasn't a 9-to-5 kind of person. So he went and manifested the shopping center and just started that way. So really, with no money down, he just found a patch of land, talked to a bunch of people who committed to being there, and then he went to a bank. The bank said, if you can get them to promise, then we'll loan you the money. They did, and he built a shopping center, and it's still there, you know?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Do you feel like you inherited some of that business acumen?
Not nearly what he did, but, you know, my own ways, it'll come out. Like, you know, as much as I fought sort of understanding the mechanics of finance and business and real estate, for the longest time to support myself, I had to have other jobs. So I did like real estate finance. Like I had a just
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like this really cool office that would let me tour in between tours. One of my first tours was with a band that I loved, but didn't pay any money, so I needed to support myself. So
what did you do exactly?
I got on the phone and sold people mortgages. That's what I did. So this was when telemarketing was a thing.
Are we talking about like the 80s, the 90s?
Early 2000s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So later.
Yeah.
Wait, when were you born?
66.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, man.
So you were in your early 30s and you were telemarketing.
This was after Berkeley. This was after school.
Well, let's go through that journey then. You're growing up in Northern California. How did you discover music?
You know what it is, man? I think music picks us. You know, I remember there was a time when I was little and I was at a picnic and I saw a band go and play, and I saw a guy carry a drum set on top of a lawn. They were playing on top of the lawn, and this guy actually built the drum set. Like, he created the trap set, as we know, and it was like, that to me was the most magical thing ever. I didn't know what it was, but I was just like, I don't think I'd ever been that taken with something.
So how did it happen for you? When did you start playing?
I started playing when I was like 11 or 12, and I never liked studying it like academically. Like there was school band, all that stuff. I kind of tried to pursue it in that capacity, but it was so structured. But whereas at home, you could set up a drum set. You could use one tom. You could use two toms. You could take the bottom heads off. If you wanted to play to a Steve Martin version of King Tut, you could do it. If you wanted to just play by yourself, you could do it. If you wanted to have a band with your friends, you could do it. It's like, it's freedom versus like, I think school and work is so constricting, you know? And I think drumming was my way. It's like a thing that I could do where you could really express yourself. Other thing about drums too is like, they're the voice. Like, you actually don't even have to talk. You can strike this membrane, the surface, and they talk for you. And so I think for my personality, it worked out so well. And it's an acoustic instrument, so you don't even need to like a microphone or an amp.
Yeah, I want to talk more about the notion that it could be your voice. Were you a shy person where you didn't feel like extroverted enough to be a singer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked out perfectly where like I actually like performing, and I always did. It was just a fun thing, and I think it came from a pure place because music made me feel joyful. You know, when I heard people play, it was like they were doing something beautiful. It was a joyful act, and so I think I got through any kind of major stage fright through that realization, that construct that this is just a good thing for everybody. Everybody loves it, you know. But yeah, the whole idea of singing, I did sing, and I was in like a choir in high school and stuff, but I don't know, too, man.
Or putting yourself out there as the focal point, was that
I think more now,
strange?
I'll tweak on that now, versus back then, I just felt the drumming was just that much cooler, you know? Peter Criss, man, like that guy's cool. Or like, you know, Keith Moon.
Sure.
Or
those guys were like larger than life.
Yeah, and then Lucky Lehrer from the Circle Jerks, like Robo, Black, like all those guys.
What was the first record you bought with your own money?
Certainly Kiss records, for sure. But that was a time when it was kids' music and it was for us, you know. You know, Kiss, there's like they wore makeup. That was like me, man. That was like, they spoke to me. 4th grade, 5th grade, that was my stuff, you know? So it was just like this, like my sister was like, those guys are disgusting. And my dad's like, this music is trash or whatever. But for me, it was just like awesome.
Yeah.
Like, how could you not understand how amazing this was? And so it keeps being like that. And the same happened when I got into the Adolescence and Black Flag, and we went and saw The Decline. Same reaction.
Oh, did you so you saw the film, and that's what got you into it?
Oh, yeah. When Darby was rolling around on the ground, you know, with a marker on his face and stuff, I'm like, who would not think that was the best thing ever, you know? And so it's still the same thing of like this sense of wonder, you know, except it's maybe a wider scope of musicians. So
when did you start playing shows?
Talent shows. I mean, how cool is that? You know, when you go to school and you're like this shy, like a vulnerable little kid and adolescent, and they'll have a talent show, and you and your friends can put a band together, and maybe you're not the best athlete or the best looking dude or whatever, but then you can sit up there and play music, and people love it, and it's your way to contribute to any kind of little microcosm community. So talent shows were where it's at. I mean, to this day, I'll go to a School of Rock show for a friend when these kids are just starting out, and I love it, and I see how important it is for them. They're going to remember that forever, you know? Those things matter the most to me, you know?
When did you start playing like gigs? Did you do that in high school?
I did, but mostly like teen club things, few recitals, but I went to a boarding school in Santa Barbara, so we were just sort of on campus, and it was more oriented like academics and stuff like that. I mean, I had summer breaks, but I mostly just water skied and smoked clove cigarettes and whatever, you know. I wasn't
Red Bukowski?
You know what? I did actually.
Yeah, if you're smoking clove cigarettes, you got to read some Bukowski or Kerouac or some shit.
Yeah.
It's like cereal and milk.
Oh yeah. Post office changed me. That book was beautiful. That's why I majored in lit, in fact.
How did you wind up at boarding school? Was it just something that your parents wanted to do for you, or
it was? I had a couple.
Was your mom a career person as well?
She is now really, really adept at business and real estate and stuff. But at the time, she was a homemaker, and we were from Lake Tahoe, and it was a smaller town. And, you know, I think they wanted to get me out of there for some reason. And I was kind of living there in the Bay Area, and I was just starting to maybe skateboard, smoke a little weed and stuff like that. And I think they sort of steered me towards a boarding school environment. They were splitting up at the time, although they remained great friends and great parents. And so I think they just wanted to get us out of there while they were trying to sort their stuff out. So I had my choice, and there was one boarding school that had a skateboard ramp, and so that was the criterion. And when I got there,
Exeter didn't have a skateboard ramp, dude?
I don't know. It was a West Coast school.
Yeah.
But I got there and they tore the skateboard ramp down.
Shit.
So I was stuck, man. I was stuck.
Could you bring your drums to school?
I could and I did, and that's what saved me, in a sense, because I'm not an academic person like some of my classmates who are brilliant. And I liked sports, but it wasn't my main thing. But music was always this thing where it was just my way of connecting or contributing to the community. I got positive feedback. I got to interact with people. So many people love music. I mean, I did the choir. I mean, actually, it was my first road gig. We did Disneyland. It was pretty badass. And then, yeah, man, I loved it.
After high school, what was your plan? Did you think it was conceivable to be a professional musician?
No way. No way.
Why not?
I'd had it drummed into me, no pun, that like drumming was this serious, it is serious, but like it's different than what I thought. Like I had a drum teacher who kind of said, I like that you're enthusiastic, but you don't like to practice, you don't want to do rudiments or read music per se. I mean, I don't blame him for saying this. It did make sense, but like he was just kind of like, if you ever want to do this for a living, you have to get way more serious. And his version of serious to me felt like musical detention. It doesn't now, but back then I just wanted to like take the bottom heads off the drums and just make some fun noise with my friends and play a dance and have fun. And it was really innocent and fun. But that
you've mentioned a couple times that you want to take the bottom heads off of your drums.
Yeah, dude, that was the time. Like
that was
the
like
age of innocence, you know, pinstripes and stuff. Come on.
Okay. So you were you like a Phil Collins guy or like a Hal Blaine person, or like were you looking more at like, again, Kiss and that kind of concert tone situation?
Well, you know, back then that was more when the British invasion came. Yeah,
so like Queen.
Well, I liked all those guys, but I really started when I went to boarding school. It was an eye opener because it was in Southern California, and all of a sudden people were playing a Sex Pistols record or a Pretenders record or a
Joy
Squeeze
Division.
record
Sure.
or Joy Division or the Wailers. I remember and that was a time when things had a different sound, and I suppose, or the Specials. I remember hearing that first Specials record going, oh my God, what is this ska stuff? This is amazing, you know? Or, you know, maybe getting a weekend pass to go see the Wailers play. By then Marley had passed, but we saw Ziggy play with Carlton Barrett before he passed, and he didn't have bottom heads. I'm like, that's cool, you know?
Right.
So I think that, although Collins was great too, and that whole gated sound. You know?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Collectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at collectivo.com.
Your drum teacher told you you weren't serious enough to make it as a professional. What did you want to do then? Like, what was your backup plan?
Oh, not only that, like, I wasn't academically motivated, and everybody thought that drumming was my one thing, and so I had to get a recommendation to get into college, and so they said, well, go to your drum teacher and get a recommendation, and he wouldn't do it. He was like, you know, I would write you one, but you're not very serious, and so it didn't, I kind of understood, I suppose, but I sort of felt like, well, if that's what you have to, if that's what's required to be a professional drummer, maybe I'll just keep doing it for fun, you know?
Yeah.
And so I went on to go to college, and I studied English Lit, you know, because I also like storytelling. USC. Yeah, and actually they had some really good musicians there, and I wound up getting into a cover band there with some friends of mine, and we just did like Doors covers and Clash covers and whatever people wanted to hear. But it was back to that ecstatic thing of like, you're playing these songs, people are happy, you know, they're dancing, and you're happy playing, and it seemed like so right. And then at the end of the night, you get $100. Like, that was just the most awesome thing in the world, you know? But there's a big difference between playing covers and then getting into crafting original music and getting people sold on that idea. And again, the whole notion of like having to sell yourself as a musician and being the right man for so many different things sonically, which does require a level of seriousness that I learned later on, you know? Again, with your friends playing, it can work. But then if you want to play with new people, with new ideas, I think at some point I realized I had to grow musically.
Well,
you know?
what changed to make you come to that realization?
You know, in my mind, it was like quitting drugs and alcohol was a big part of it, you know, because I think I kind of had to reprogram my belief system in that, like, you know, you kind of can, at any point in time, change things up and grow and be a different person, where, like, I just said to myself, like, you know what? Why not? Like, I've lost everything. Like, there was a certain point where I went through a breakup and school was terrible. My parents were, like, I had nothing left to lose. And so I thought, well, why not? I'm just going to go for it. And so I just started studying and practicing, and I had really cool friends. They were just like, dude, you could do it. And so I went to Berkeley. You know, my parents were helpful. I studied with this dude, Maurice Spivak.
Sure.
Who whipped me into shape. And that was pretty awesome. And then I went to Berkeley and studied jazz, just like you.
Well, how did you get into drugs and alcohol? When did you start drinking?
God. Eighth grade, just a little bit. It was fun for a minute too. Like, I wish I could say like it was just bad news and it was a dark place, but there was some magic involved in it, you know, some adventures, and I think because I'm a musician and maybe getting so deep into punk rock and, like, you know, the Ramones or the Pistols and all that stuff, there was some sort of folklore or journeying involved in it that, like, I don't know, it was really exciting. All that stuff was for a time, but then after a while, for me, it didn't work, and, you know.
Well, what drugs were you using?
I don't know, like, pretty much whatever. I think for me, I drew the line at like really scary hard drugs, and I think that was the thing that scared me, is that there's a whole group of my friends that we're all doing lots of fun things. We were surfing and skateboarding and making music and painting and being architects, but we were really going at it and partying, and I think some people kept going and maybe struggled deeply. And then I think that's where I got a little bit scared, where I knew if I went that direction, that's where I was going to go. And I think at that point I had this epiphany that I wanted to be a real drummer. Funny story, I was at USC and I was taking conga lessons from this guy, Roberto Miranda. And he's a really amazing bass player. I think he's still gigging and stuff. And he had played with Arsenio and Rodriguez and Horace Tabscott, a lot of incredible jazz and Latin musicians. And I rolled into a conga lesson, and I believe I had just smoked a joint. And he said to me, he's like, you want to study jazz? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you could never be a jazz musician and mess with drugs. And at the time, I had never read about Elvin Jones or Philly Joe Jones, so I didn't know any better. So I thought he was right. You know, I thought, oh, well, he's a jazz musician, and he says I have to be clean and sober. So I think that started a new chapter for me.
Well, you said that you had to change your belief system. What was your belief system when you were using, and then how did you change it?
The belief system was, as it relates to music, was simply that, you know, music was one or the other kind of thing. Either you were in a stadium and you were playing in front of all these people like Led Zeppelin or Kiss or Journey or whatever, or you were like in a punk band, or you were like working in like a cruise ship or something in that kind of environment. all those things are great, but I didn't feel like I fit into any of those boxes, you know? So I just felt like those just weren't avenues for me to be a professional musician. And I just didn't realize that, like, the heart always leads you in the right place. And I think maybe...
Does it?
I do. I firmly believe that. At least for me, I can't say anyone else's experience, but like I just learned how to follow my heart, you know, to trust it. And that for me was a spiritual thing that came with the journey, with my journey, you know. And I really think that's how I got to kind of pursue music, but it was in a really personal way that had nothing to do with any of the paths that were presented to me, you know.
Where did your heart lead you, and how did your belief system change?
My heart led me to, my heart talked about jazz, you know, as a thing that I wanted to check out. And I went to Berklee School of Music, and it was just eye-opening for me, you know. It was hard in that I felt like I still didn't want to be a professional musician in Berklee because understandably, they were directing people to either be educators or maybe do some of the routes where the paying work was. And most of those routes I didn't like, and I didn't want to teach drumming per se or be like a band teacher. That's a beautiful thing, but again, it gets back into a constricted zone that I wasn't too comfortable with. So I was just like, I just wanted to learn the mechanics, and so I had guys like Ramsey and teach me about
John Ramsey.
Yeah. Teach me about like jazz drumming, and I studied with this guy Alan Dawson.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
the great Alan Dawson.
Yeah.
Did you love it there, or what was your experience?
No, I mean I almost quit. They had these jury ensemble performances, and I remember auditioning with. I thought I'm going to do something out of the box. And I remember we did Waiting in Vain by Bob Marley. And I remember the jury ensemble, Bill Pierce, who played with Tony Williams, was there.
Saxophonist.
Yeah, and it was a student-led band, and I brought sheet music in, and we did this Marley tune, Waiting in Vain, because Carlton Barrett was one of my heroes, and they did not like that at all. I don't even know if they gave me any, like, probably zeros or ones or something. And ironically, the one drop in that kind of music has been my bread and butter since, you know, and that's been great to me, you know. So people aren't always right about what's good or relevant or not. I mean, and I don't blame them either. They're there to teach jazz, and that wasn't jazz, you know. Mm-hmm. But I learned more. I think what I liked about those guys was that they taught me how to read, and they kind of taught me how to be a responsible adult. Like, I think if you want to be in a band, if you want to do anything, learning how to show up and be professional and be versatile and nimble are good things. I never graduated. I left. I started getting into Afro-Cuban music, and I started going back and forth to Havana. And
how would you get there?
Well, there was a program that brought us there, like, legally. There was a 2-week course, and I didn't know anything about Latin music, like clave, nothing, you know. And then we went to the Escuela Nacional de Arte, and that was an era for Cuban music where a lot of the great Afro-Cuban drummers were still around that are no longer there. This guy Pancho Quinto, who sort of revolutionized rumba, and a lot of these drummers. This guy, Anga Diaz, was still around, and we just got to see some of the greatest Cuban drummers ever just playing in small places. And I think that helped me get through maybe feeling stifled. Like Berklee, I think, made me feel like if I wasn't a clinician per se, that drumming wasn't an option for me again. And then I went to Cuba, and I would see some dude who was a radiologist by day, and then could play the fiercest drums by night, mm-hmm. you know? And that brought me back to like, drumming comes from the heart. It has nothing to do with a magazine or a film clip or whatever. It's, you know?
Yeah.
So Cuba totally got me back into just loving drums, you know?
Oigan bien, oiganla. Somos los cubanos que venimos invadiendo. Somos los cubanos que venimos a decirte a ti.
The Trap Set will always be available for free, but we rely on donations from our listeners. Please visit our website at thetrapset.net and click donate. Subscribe to our show on iTunes, and if you enjoy what you hear, give us a review.
I think I just sort of put the creative part first, and monetizing it for me was an afterthought, I suppose. You know, I just almost treated art like art and commerce like commerce for the longest time, you know?
And you mentioned earlier that you did telemarketing. Mm-hmm. What else did you do to support yourself during that period?
I mean, I played gigs. My first gig touring was the guitar player for this band, the Pixies, had a really cool band called the Martinis, and they kind of gave me a shot because I also loved indie rock and punk rock and stuff. So
How did you meet them?
You know, a good friend of mine, Perry Ostrin, who's in this band, Spanish Kitchen, really cool indie band, didn't have time to do that gig, and I met Joe and Linda and really great bass player Jeff, and I had no experience touring. I was pretty green, and they really taught me a lot of cool stuff, and we just started to do these little runs. Like,
what did they teach you?
Oh man, like anyone who thinks that doing a rock setting as opposed to a jazz setting or a Latin setting, that's easy or dumb, they're wrong, man. Playing with volume, making it sound right, playing a song exactly, an exact arrangement, making it feel right for rock, being on the road, getting along with people, lobby call, knowing how to hang with different personalities, you know, keeping a bad day to yourself, you know, when you're in a van with people. All those things are very hard learned things that they taught me.
That's what they should teach you in music school.
Yeah, none of that. That stuff they didn't, you know, that stuff they didn't teach me, but really, really great people like that did. It was a really nice thing, you know. So I would do like side gigs like that, anything I could find like that too.
And how did you meet Jack?
Jack was through my friend J.P. Plunier, who at the time was managing an artist named Ben Harper, was just starting a label called Everloving, and Jack was an artist that he really was excited about. And JP was just really cool. I remember him saying, like, this guy's gonna call you, because I had just left the Martinis and I didn't have much going on. And JP called me. He's like, "Are you still playing the Martinis?" I'm like, "Nah." And he's like, "Okay, this guy Jack's gonna call you. After you guys talk, call me back and tell me how it went." And JP's is a very managerial type of guy, so usually like conversations don't go like that with him. So I was like, "Wow, this guy must be interesting." I don't know. So Jack called, and he was just out of UCSB and just the nicest dude. And it just sort of started there. We just had a nice talk. We both like surfing and skateboarding, and we both had some musical influences that were shared too. And so,
what were your shared musical influences?
Oh God, Fugazi, Pixies.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, he loves Fugazi. Pixies. We were listening to like a lot of Tribe and De La Soul. We definitely bonded over the punk rock thing too. And then he kind of taught me a lot about folk music and, you know, the Bill Withers side of things that I didn't really know about, you know.
And did you anticipate the kind of success that you experienced together?
Yeah, instantly.
You knew that he had something?
Instantly.
How did you know?
You just know with certain people. Like but at that point, I was older, and I had been in a lot of different bands and worked with like a lot of different artists in different capacities. And the funny thing is, like with singing specifically and with songs, they were all good in their own way. They all had good pitch. They all had original songs with verse, chorus, bridge, melody, but they just didn't, you know, to have that thing, it's almost like a gift. I don't know what it is, but the minute he started playing those songs, I just was like, whoa, this guy's great.
And how would you describe your creative dynamic?
He was super cool. He still is. Like,
What was your role?
man, I'll tell you, he would just play his songs and I'd play along and we'd just sort of figure out how it would work. And there were like all these different incarnations, but they were all good. And he was a guy, like by then I had studied with a lot of teachers and I'd gone to music school and I'd been in all these bands, and he had only been in one band and he was a film major. So he wasn't like a muso. He was more of a surfer that also played and sang. But his ideas were left field, but really great. And I think I really reveled in learning a perspective of music that I'd never seen before. And I think that worked in my favor because it was very genuine. I think that he liked that I wanted to listen to his ideas. I think it worked well because he would say something like, why do you have to play the hi-hat in this song? Why should there be any hi-hat or ride? Or something that didn't immediately make sense to me because I'd always thought, well, this is pop music. You have to do one or the other.
Right.
But then it would be really fun and it would be great. And it wouldn't be a thing necessarily based on technique, but just like feel or intuition. That was really a great thing for me. That was a nice bonus. Because again, like back to what we talked about, how maybe in academia or certain places they just sort of think music is this and you have to be this to fit in there, and if you're not that, well, sorry. That guy proved them wrong in a sense, you know? So that was cool. Like we'd go in and just have fun and play music, and I think I didn't know it at the time, but there was a bidding war with him, and I think it was just really great that he wound up maybe going towards what he felt was cool or interesting, rather than maybe something that seemed a lot more commercially viable. I don't know what. I don't want to speak for him, but it seemed to me he led with his heart too, you know?
And you felt like you had a place in the music, like your personality fit in a nice way.
I did. And it was a really nice feeling too. It was natural. I think too, with so many of these musical stories that are impressive to me, it's just a bunch of people getting together and it just naturally works. It was like the result was already sealed in the envelope before the person showed up. It was just a thing that just happened, you know? And I felt like so many things I've had to like, you sort of have to force into happening, and it's okay, it's cool, you get through it, but it was like, it's only because I played that song 50 times and learned every exact nuance that it was able to fly, whereas this just seemed like natural, you know?
You somehow think you know me, but can you read inside my soul? You try to tell my story, what you believe you don't quite know. Everybody has their
When you and Jack play together now, how does it feel?
It's good. It's so fun. You know, the best times, for whatever reason we do, when we go on, like, these are like larger venues now, like where it's like, I guess sheds or whatever you call them, or like bigger things. That's cool, but the times I really have fun are like, we'll play, they set up instruments in the dressing room and we'll get ready for the show, and I'm just playing with brushes or really quietly, and we're just going through the set and just playing is just relaxing. And those are especially like really amazing to me because you're just kind of grooving and hanging with your friends and talking and stuff like that, and those are the times I really like, you know. So
I think when we originally met, you had recently started a company called Roots EQ, and you make drum mufflers.
yeah.
How did that come into being?
That was like my friend Matt Smith builds these really incredible congas, and he came to some shows, just wanted me to show. He was showing me his like bells and stuff like that. He's just a master builder, and I had never found. I have to play in quiet settings with Jack and with lower volume things, and I felt like if I was putting T-shirts and stuff on the drums, you're stuck with them on there, or it just crushed the sound too much. And so I just got a hanger and bent it into a circle and stapled some pillowcase across it, and it just immediately sounded cool. And I called Matt. I'm like, hey, can you make this for me? And it just started from there. He was just really into it. And he took it to the nth degree, where he was figuring out stitching patterns and the right fabrics that would let the right transients of notes go in and translate through a Pro Tools session, and how it would look, and the gauge of the wire. Like what I am with like maybe drumming, he is with crafting drums. And so it's really, again, it was almost like when I got to meet someone like Jack, where you just luck out and you meet this incredible person that wants to collaborate with you. And that was almost with Matt, where I just sort of send him a boneheaded idea, sort of Homer Simpson-like, and he turns it into a masterful thing,
How do you like running a company?
It's almost such a low-key thing, It's almost like this cool thing that we're just sharing with our friends, and Jose from Revival really helped us by just maybe curating it a little bit, because otherwise no one would have heard of it. And it's doable because it's at a very low-key place, and it's almost word of mouth, and people that would want to really seek out something like that will find us, and I like that, just low-key.
You're not like trying to dominate the world of drumming.
No way, man. No.
What was the first thought that went through your mind this morning?
I was tired. I played last night with my friend's salsa band, and we played 2.5 hours straight, and it felt like I got hit by a truck. I was tired. They like to go crazy.
But what did you think about?
Honestly, I felt some gratitude, because, again, I felt like I had so much fun last night, and I got to play music for another night, Almost feel like don't you have this feeling like you've sort of cheated? You've sort of like pulled one over on life, that you get to do what you love, and, because I've had jobs in maybe professional environments or office environments or whatever, where it was all fine and good, but seriously, I get to play music, man. How great is this, Do
you ever lose sight of that?
Yeah, it's incredible. Sometimes music is really hard. The problem is with the arts, when it's going well, it's really great. And when it's not going well, because it's something that you love, you feel it so much more acutely than like when I was telemarketing and someone's like, I don't want one of your mortgages. I'd be like, next, I didn't care, I mean, I cared, but I didn't mind.
You weren't emotionally vulnerable in the way that you are when you're putting
Correct.
your music out into the world.
That's it.
Well, what are your goals moving forward?
I've got another record coming out.
How many records have you made?
Six or seven.
6. Okay.
Yeah.
And
under my name too, but yeah.
Under your name too. So, what motivated you to want to start putting out music under your own name to begin with?
I'll tell you what, I think for me, I'm a professional sideman, and I like that. I don't mind that at all. But for me to be able to sit down and really help an artist manifest exactly what they need and put myself out of the equation, which I feel like, at least for me, is part of the job of me helping out my friends who are giving songs out. I need to feel like it's something like I can write songs and do stuff too, and that I'm there by choice, not because I have to, And so I think knowing that I can write songs, and number one, it helps me be a better sideman because I can empathize with them a little bit more. And number two, it helps me keep my ego out of the situation because I can have a place to express myself and know that and I can remind myself I'm a drummer not because, any other reason other than I love drumming. I could be a singer or I could be a songwriter and artist myself if I wanted to, but I'm choosing the drums.
Yeah. What are your goals for this next record?
Well, there's a little label called Everloving that's putting it out, and this label is awesome. They put out some really cool artists, and I think, I hate to say this, but so much of the goals are completed in that I really like the songs, and for the longest time I was stuck and I didn't like the songs, and now I do, and my friend Matt Costa helped me with it, and we just he was so patient. We just did the songs over and over and over until I felt like they just had the right vibe. And so I think that's really most of it, that you make a thing that you like and that you think is other people going to like too. That's the biggest part. I mean, it'll be fun to play live, and I think it'll be challenging to leave the post of being the drummer to the front guy. I think that's going to present some challenges that'll be fun, really, but daunting.
What are you going to play?
I don't know. I did a tour of Europe and North America, opening for one leg was for Mason Jennings and one leg was for Donovan Frankenreiter, where I just I played guitar and sang, just because for budgetary reasons I could just be me. But I think I'll probably drum and sing, and I like that. I think that I like that most.
If you had to get a drummer to play behind you, who would you get?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a whole
Keltner?
round. No, man. Probably my friends. I'd probably call you, or my friend Troy plays. My friend Sean Baltazar plays. Anybody, really, I prefer a friend.
Somebody that you have a personal connection with.
Yeah. I don't want things sounding too pro. And not in a pro, in terms of a session guy who...
Somebody who's just plugging themselves in.
Yeah. It has to be personal, and I think the most power for me, I found the most power not in being the pro session guy, but just making music with friends. And that's the only way I've ever had any kind of success in music, is with my friends. And that's where the power is for me.
Any closing thoughts? Anything else that we needed to cover?
I don't know, man. This is cool. Follow your heart. That's what I say.
Adam Topol, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I love this. This is great. Thanks, Joe.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.